Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Sean. So it's 5 o'clock, and I'm here to send us all out to the party tonight. So hopefully you'll do a good job with that. First of all, thank you, everybody who is a non-native English speaker, for listening to people talking English all day. I know that can be a lot of work. And also, from more personal thank you from me for everybody who's a customer of Exasol or helps sells Exasol for buying it and helping other people to buy it, because that way Aaron has enough money that he can donate licenses to Path, and we can use it. So thank you. So I'm going to do a few words of, got slides up? I'm seeing them on here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to do a few words of introduction about Path. And then go over the set of principles that we've kind of come to that inform our work in global health. So Path is a large nonprofit organization. We've got 1,600 employees active on about 250 different projects right now in 70 different countries. And I'm going to go back to this slide because this highlights our work. It's maternal and child health. Because if we can help the moms and babies to be healthy and the young people, that's going to carry all the boats of all the guys like me, too. So, so across these 5 platforms, we help develop vaccines, medicines, medical equipment, diagnostic tools, and devices. So, for example, we have a water purifier that we help develop that's been shipped down to the Democratic Republic of Congo to support work against the Ebola outbreak that's happening down there right now. And then there's the place where I come in, which is system and service innovations, where we do things like use data better to inform our project work. So I wanted to start with talking about the journey of our data, as this is kind of a larger journey about our principles. So Seth had showed a slide earlier of a lot of paper with projects, and this was a picture I took of a wall in our office in Lusaka. And this is data. Well, it's data before it's data yet, because these are logbooks which are used by volunteer community health workers who are out there in the field taking in information about cases of malaria, the diagnostics that they run, and the care that they deliver. And then for other data collection, here's a gentleman down in the Democratic Republic of Congo who's out going through the jungle doing tracing for Ebola to find where anybody had contact with somebody who'd been in contact with somebody who had Ebola. So we can stop that. And then other times, we have a nurse here in Tanzania who's got an internet-connected iPad. We're fully into the 21st century now, capturing information on childhood vaccinations. So with these data sets, we're getting into the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of rows. And then where we start getting into the bigger data is doing our more predictive and geospatial analytics. So here's just one province in Zambia. We're just looking at water flow data, and it's 14 million data points. So when you extend that out to the whole country or multiple countries across the world, we're into millions and billions of records. So with that, as we're processing data, I want to talk about kind of how things ideally go. So ideally, we have a set of questions that we're going to work with, and those questions kind of line up in a pretty reasonable way for what we want to do. And then we have our data. And our data lives all over the place, between stuff that's on paper that gets into somebody's computer, to Excel files stored on some network drive, to databases. And ideally, that all just links up seamlessly, and then we're able to get all of our questions answered and be happy, and that's great. So how often does that happen for any of you? OK, no hands, so we got something to talk about then. So where our state is more is that we've just got a ton of different questions. And some are more important, some are less important, but we're not so sure, and they connect to other questions, and so we don't have a good sense of what we need. And then our data is kind of a mess. It's not well linked together. So we get data out of one system that has one set of geography IDs and data out of another system that has the way those provinces were 5 years ago. True story from yesterday. And then we have these challenges with the data of, can we get it on time? Is the data of high quality, or maybe the data is just not there? And then there's resource challenges where we may not have the staff and the skills to manage the data or to visualize the data or the business knowledge to actually work with the data. So it ends up making for this really sad, sad person working with data. And I've been there, and that's part of why my forehead is receding from that. And in thinking about this, and why do we end up that way? How do we do it? Because our mission is to improve the health of the world, and we're trying to use data better to do that. So how do we get there? And one of the pieces of this, we think, has to do with the standard kind of common processes for working with data. So the kind of standard data analysis pipeline is we're going to come up with some question, we're going to gather data, we're going to cleanse it, we're going to analyze it, we're going to choose some visualizations, make our output, and then do some sort of presentation of it. It's a very linear process. In the same way, when we look at traditional report writing, where we get some sort of report spec and we're going to write some queries and build it, or doing dashboard development. And the thing with this all is, where's the person? Where are the people who are generating that data, working with that data, consuming that data in all these little boxes? So what if humans were at the center of our process? And that's what I'm going to talk about. So we have these 4 principles that we've come up with for working with data. And the first one is expose. So in this phase, you can think of them as kind of phases. And here, we want to show all of the data and reveal it in all of its warts and all of its glory to everybody involved. So one of the ways my boss described it is, give me all the pivots to see all of that. And that's something that's been kind of a thread today with different projects with Exasol and drilling down and letting us be able to do that. So this first place is expose and showing that data sooner rather than later to people. And then next, we're starting to get into, okay, what are our questions? And maybe our data isn't quite the right shape of what we need, but we're able to move it, manipulate it, start asking some of those questions and explore that data. And this is where a lot of dashboards come out of. And then from explore, then we're into actually answering some of those questions and explaining why our data is the way it is. So what are these outliers? What are the reasons behind these outliers? Maybe we can get into places of predicting what those outliers are in advance so we can do something about them. And then in the center of all of this are the people, the users that we're empowering by helping them to do more with their data, skill building with them, so that way they can meet their needs of improving health. And I'm going to grab a little water here. So everybody else grab water too. It's warm in here. Now these different aspects, I talked about them in sequence because we live in time and have to do that. But really they come in different ways as we go. So for example, we might be working with a data set of HIV incidence data, and we really want to understand what the triggers for HIV incidence and contributors to that are, and we may want to integrate another data set into that. So for example, population movement data that we might be pulling from cell phone towers. And in a case like that, that's going to lead to a whole other expose phase with that new data set where we get to find all the wonderful problems in that data. So now I'm going to go through these in a little more detail. So I'm going to talk about expose first. So in this, an expose is really about revealing the data to yourself and revealing it to others. So one way for us in doing that, in making the data available to others, is we want people to be able to consume it in their natural environment and push it out there. So one of the things we've done is we've taken our data visualization tool of choice, Tableau, and put it into DHIS2, which is a health information system used across the developing world. And some partnership with Star Schema and Palladium Group, we've done some coding, put it in there, so we're now looking at Tableau projects inside of DHIS2, and people are able to drill down until they can pull up dashboards. So for example, this is a dashboard of, it's called a 90-90 cascade, and it's a way of looking at what percentage of patients are know they have HIV, are getting the right treatment for HIV, and that their white blood cell counts are at the right level, low enough. So if you can get all those things right, you can really control the spread of HIV. So that's one aspect of Expose, making the data available to others. Now, I'm a data analyst at heart, and I'm also a downhill skier. And when I get to get a brand new data set to work with, it's kind of like being like that skier up there. It's fresh tracks for me, where I'm the first person getting to see this, get to see patterns in the data, maybe uncover bits of wisdom in that data that nobody's seen before, and it's awesome. But most of the time, the data is more like that. So this is a whole piece of Expose of we want to show this as soon as possible for people, because it has so many downstream effects. So this is a dashboard that we built as part of the Visualize No Malaria project in Zambia, where we're working with the Ministry of Health in Zambia to eliminate malaria in the country by 2021. And what we're looking at here, in the center of each of those little batches of lines, are healthcare facilities, and then out extending from them in the radiuses are community health workers. And for some of those community health workers, we have a sense of where they are. For some of them, we don't. Some of them, or some of their facilities, seem to be located outside of the administrative boundaries of the districts that they're supposed to be in. So if we're attributing data to one district versus another district, we can end up attributing it wrong, which would then throw all our metrics off. So with this dashboard that anybody in the involved can look at, we have things like this, where one of the district health information officers took his smartphone, went out into the field to the different facilities and recorded all of their latitude and longitude fields, mailed them back to us so we could get them into the system and update them. So it's empowering the end users to be able to do that data cleansing and not wait for somebody else when we're exposing that data to them. Now there's the piece around 80% of our work as data analysts is cleansing the data, 20% we're actually working with it. One of the things that I love about this Expose metaphor is it helps normalize that 80% of the work. It can help speed it up, but it also normalizes it. So instead of people waiting for like, where's my report? Where's my report? You said the report would be here last week. What's going on? We're normalizing that this is a hard thing. It's going to take a while. And that we're also normalizing what that hard thing is, which is that we're going to find the warts in our data. And we, all together, get to work on them and fix them and clean them up. And that changes the whole conversation about what can happen from it being more, you're waiting for me to get you something, to we're partners. So that's Expose. Now I want to talk about Explore. So this is where things get kind of fun, where we're moving from more static to interactive or getting into time and space and volume. So one example of this with Explore is, here's a dashboard, and I was really hoping to get a picture of this, because this is a giant printout that's like this wide, that's printed out every quarter in Kenya, and it's a dashboard of maternal health that's done on a PDF, printed out, distributed, and handed out at the county and sub-county levels all over the country. And they wanted to start moving this online. So in doing this and moving it, we're looking at, okay, what's the skill level of the people involved? Who's our audience with this? And they're people who haven't had interactive data visualization before. So the first data visualization we made for them was a dashboard that looks very much like what they just had. So people like me who are like, visualization is in my job title, and I look at this and I kind of cringe, and I see it, but this is where our users are at and what we need to do to meet their needs. And then we turn on the interactivity with the filtering, with the drill down, and the drill down just kind of keeps on going in this one until we're looking at facility level data, which is stuff they never really had access to before, to look at it in this way, or to have the time series so they don't have to go back and look at what was it last quarter or 2 quarters ago. They can see it all there. So here in this Explore piece, we're adding dimensions to the data that they didn't know before, or they didn't really have access to before. And then there's this other piece of Explore of really working with all the data. And in this case, this example comes from Tanzania, from a child vaccination project we have there, which is a large international initiative. So we're tracking information on all of the childhood vaccinations in the whole country in Tanzania. And we had a question. So how many facilities have had child vaccination stockouts of 1, 2, 3, or more days? So when they ran out of a particular vaccine. And so the process for pulling data had monthly CSV files, some manual cleansing involved, dumping in a Power Query in Excel. And given as the project was growing and over time and over space and taking over more of the country, that ended up being too big for Power Query in Excel to handle. And even with that, they couldn't support the kind of analysis that we wanted to do. So we ended up having to redo the data pipeline. So doing direct downloads, Alteryx. If I wasn't here this week, it would be an Exasol. So it's CSV for a moment, and then Tableau. And then once we had that, 30 seconds later, we had a visualization showing us where all those stockouts were, which the numbers are really small, but that axis goes all the way out past 500 days. So some facilities there have been missing certain vaccinations for over 500 days. And over a year and a half. So this highlights one of the things that happens really regularly when we start using tools like Tableau. In my prior life as a Tableau consultant, I saw this again and again, that tools like Tableau let us explore the data from a visual sense really rapidly and ask questions and get answers, and ask questions and get answers. And eventually, we get into the deeper level questions, of which this was one of them. And one of two things happened, and I pulled this example because it had both, that the current system can't handle the volume, or the current system just can't handle the complexity of the analysis that we want to do. And so invariably, any of you who've just started on the Tableau side, you're going to run into this sooner or later, and you're going to need to invest in the data pipeline and work on that. So, and we're fortunate enough in Path that we have tools like Exasol available to us to make those problems go away. So let's cover and explore. So having talked about expose and explore, now we want to get into explain. And here, we're going beyond just rates. And this is one place where a lot of those, like the red, yellow, green dashboard, the stoplight dashboards and things like that, don't necessarily tell us why things are the way they are. So in this explain phase, we're really working to get into that phase. We want to know, what are the contributing variables? What actions can we take when we see something? So this first example I'm going to show of this. This is a view of indoor residual spraying data against malaria in Zambia. And for this project that was in Siavanga district, we're drilling down and down from country through province through district. We're looking at health facility catchments now. Now we're seeing individual spray areas in there. And then we're going to go into a spray area, and all those little dots are structures that were mapped on OpenStreetMap, thanks to a whole bunch of volunteers, including people like Ravi in this room, wherever he is. And we're able to get this incredibly fine-grained data about what structures were sprayed, which ones weren't, monitoring the progress through the spray season, and then have all that really fine-grained data to use for the downstream. So this is coming out of the M-Spray project, which is led by Acros and ONA. So we love this visualization and everything else that's been coming out of that for really explaining what's going on with where are we spraying, where are we not spraying. So another piece of explain, an example, from, and this just was from a couple of weeks ago. I was in a training class, and I want to start the animation here. So we're in Tableau, and we're looking at community health workers and some different malaria metrics. And in this case, we're looking at active number tested is our first one. So how many people did the community health worker go out and actively test for malaria? And we see those numbers, and they look pretty good. And then this pops up, and we've got a bar at the top there that's really, really long. And there's something weird about that. That bar should not be that long given everything else. It's a higher number of positive cases. And then we bring in the traveled malaria here on the right, and that's incredibly high. So traveled malaria is malaria that somebody came from somewhere else in the last 30 days and they have malaria. So they probably brought it from here. And we've just got a few dimensions in this data. There's nothing in this data that's going to explain why that traveled was. So fortunately, we had access to Fortune Buenje here, who's the District Health Information Officer for Mazabuka District. And he looked at that and he said, oh, that's where that community health worker is. There's a sugarcane farm, the largest one in Zambia. And during the cutting season there, there's a whole lot of migrant workers who are coming in from another province where the malaria rates are much higher, and they're bringing that malaria with them. And we're like, oh, so that's a great story. Can we see it in the data? And so we pop up a little satellite map, and boom, there's the red dot of that healthcare facility, and then all the green circles around it are the sugarcane fields. So there it is there, and then we start going back into the data and do a time series analysis across each year, and boom, there's that spike every April where when the sugarcane harvest is happening. So having this kind of explanation, this is small data. This is it's anecdotal data in a way from human beings. And it's one of the things for us. We have, everybody knows about machine learning and AI, and our country partners in the ministries of health, they're like, when can we just turn on the magic AI box and solve our healthcare problems? Just like all of us want to do in our organizations. And things like this are not, that's not in the data right now. It's just not there. So in thinking about what we can do for our users, we need to have ways to engage them and incorporate this kind of data, which is incredibly important when we want to get to that point of doing dashboards like this one where we're getting into doing predictive analytics. If they can't trust what those numbers are saying and what those predictive analyses are predicting, then it's a useless dashboard. So this is ideally in this last part of Explain, we're getting into those predictive analytics or even prescriptive analytics and telling them asking users what to do. So this is an overview across Zambia that we've been working on. So we've gone through Expose and Explore and Explain. Now we're going to talk about Empower a little bit, which is my favorite part. So humans are good at a lot of stuff, but we can always help them build their skills. So that's one way we want to empower users. And then another way to empower users is to take note of what computers are good at and then use that to get rid of tasks for the humans. So with that, it's really imperative to empower people to invest in skill building for them. So training classes, coaching, the technical assistance for what they're doing. So this is one of our volunteers working with a team in Zambia on this. And then there's this place in that where us being a nonprofit, we don't have a ton of resources, so we're like, where can we go out there for resources? And Eva Murray, who's sitting over there, and Andy Kriebel run something called Makeover Monday in the data visualization community, where they post a data set Sunday night, and then the idea is on Monday, people can take half an hour or so, and do a makeover of that data. Whoops. Let me go back to this one. May have to go one more. I want to get the video to play. So a few weeks ago, last month, the video's not going to play. OK. So you got to trust me, there are like 30-odd visualizations that we're just going to scroll through here of different people around the world who took a simulated data set of malaria data that I made up that looked pretty real and worked through it and built a bunch of great visualizations, which could then inspire Lichahe here in his Tableau training class to start building out and working with different visualizations. So that's one place of Empower, is really helping users to know more of what they could do, so that way they're not building the same old thing every again. Because all we're going to do normally is build what we know. So if all we've seen is the red, yellow, green dashboard, that's what we're going to tend to build, that's what we're going to ask for, and we're not going to take advantage of the power that these new tools have to give us. Which relates to this other piece of giving time back to people. So when we have a task that takes a whole day, like it takes 8 hours or more, really that's a task that spreads out across multiple days of time. But if we can cut that task down to an hour, that's basically an order of magnitude improvement on that time. Standard meeting size is an hour. I can plug an hour into my day to get something done. But if I can cut that down further to something that takes 5 minutes, like the time it takes to get a cup of tea or coffee, that's another order of magnitude improvement, and I can have multiple iterations in that 1 hour. Or if we can get the task down to the time it takes to take a sip of coffee, that's yet another order of magnitude improvement on that time. So any place that we can find in shaving off that time for people to do things, whether it's ingesting data, or it's doing data cleansing, or it is that query time that we get out of Exasol, that's going to work for people. Because that difference from a day to taking a sip of coffee, that's 1,000 times difference. And that can let us iterate so much more. Try things out, fail at things, break things, fix them, faster, faster, faster. So I've got an example of one of those iteration phases here. And so when the Visualize No Malaria project started as a partnership between the Tableau Foundation, PATH, and the Ministry of Health in Zambia, the Tableau Foundation involved a group of Zen masters, Tableau Zen masters, which included myself. And in looking at what they needed to do, we're like, oh, we can do some really awesome stuff with this. So we made visualizations like this really slick, bright kind of visualization and everything, and satellite data and tracking trends over time and really awesome stuff. And then we go off to Zambia and talk with the users. So this is Anya, one of our volunteers with Prudence and Rain. And they're kind of like, you know what? What we really want to do is just monitor what the CHWs are doing, see what community health workers, see what their performance is in submitting data and the quality of their data. So we're like, OK, well, we'll let go of the awesome stuff that we did and do things for them. And here's their data set. They're just like, can you help us work with this better and make it easier for us? So a few minutes later, we got a little dashboard and everything. And they're like, that's nice. It's a big picture of what's going on and everything. But we're only showing this to them like every 3 or 6 months, where there'll be these data review meetings, which might be totally open air like this particular meeting where stuff's printed out and handed out. And waiting 3 or 6 months to give somebody feedback on what's happening is just a really long time. We wanted to make that faster. So in that took us in a direction we had no idea we were going to go into at the beginning of this project, where the staff who are entering data on their cell phones and submitting it into that database and everything, and here's our data quality dashboards. So we're doing all of that work, but then closing that loop by sending them text messages about their data quality and getting it to them. So the facility staff like Prudence and Rain love it because they're able to much more keep track of things, and it saves them from a whole lot of manual labor and trying to remember and keep track of phone calls. So we've offloaded those tasks to the computer because the computer's really good at maintaining lists. And then the other thing is the staff who are getting these text messages also really like it as well, because somebody's paying attention to their data. And we're all human beings. We want people to pay attention to what we do. And these community health workers, they're volunteers who are entering the data. They're not getting paid to do this. So we need to find those ways to let them know, hey, thank you, and this is one of them. So with that, I love this because it's 160 characters of a data visualization. And it works. So here's the last bit I'm going to talk about here. So got a little graph, and I'm going to put these 3 phases of expose, explore, and explain through here. And then our y-axis is how complex our data visualization is. And what we found is that when we start out in expose, we're often in simple visualizations. We're in histograms. We're in scatter plots. Even this funky little map thing that we did, it's basically a scatter plot. And so over time, we're using that. We're getting that picture of the data, and then we're starting to use it to explore and what's going on. We're building out these dashboards and other views which are more complex with what they do. There's more interactivity in things. We've got drill downs and all that kind of stuff going on with that. But then as we understand better what the data tells us, we're able to get into more specific actions of what to do about that data. We've answered those questions and we know what to do next, which then gets us to work lists, where it's here's what we need to do, whether that's here's the parents I need to reach out to because their children are due for vaccination, or it's the houses that I need to follow up on so I can track HIV cases in the community. Whatever that is, we can get there. So those are the 4 principles: expose, explore, explain, and empower. And I'm just going to go to my notes here. I just want to take one more point on this one with the exploratory dashboards, because there's this whole thing that I see a lot in my Tableau work of dashboards going stale. So the dashboard comes out, everybody's excited, you do the training, and you watch this peak in usage, and then it levels off, and then it starts declining and declining and declining over time. And one of the things that we think about with why that happens is that those dashboards are exploratory. That people are finding out things, but the dashboards aren't necessarily supporting them to get to that explain kind of phase with them. And so when you're in that place of remaking something that you've done, think about how you can go deeper. What questions that are further down can you actually answer with those dashboards? And get there. And then you'll have much more satisfied users who will ask you for new problems instead of the same old problems. So with that, I'm going to finish out with one last story. About 20 years ago, I worked for a software company, and our chief of development had worked on the Apollo program. So he really was a rocket scientist. And it was, he was from MIT, and we had all these other people from MIT and Harvard, and just really brilliant people there. There's one of our product managers who really tried to keep us focused. And he pointed out, we've got some really smart people in this building. Just like all of you are really frickin' smart people who do amazing things with databases. Some of the stuff I've seen up here today and a little bit yesterday are just like, wow. Come talk to me and volunteer for Path, please. And if not me, go talk with Seth. Go talk in your own environment. Go help local organizations work with their data, because there's lots of need out there, and you have a lot to give. So with that being said, we're a lot of really smart people. But statistically speaking, we're not the smartest people out there. There's 7 billion people on the planet. So just the odds are we're not so hot shakes. But what we can really do is build our systems, not to support people because they're going to make mistakes and they're going to screw up, or they're going to mess up our data or run the report in the wrong way and crash our server. We want to support them to be smarter. And we want to support them knowing that there are people there who are smarter than us, who know more about their data, like Fortune, who knew exactly why that those sugarcane workers were there. So with that, thank you all for listening to me. I will take questions offline so we can go to the party.